Well, after weeks of testimony and some explicit pieces of evidence, the trial of embattled hip-hop mogul Diddy Combs is coming to an end. Combs is facing several federal charges, including racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. 34 witnesses took the stand, including two of Combs' former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura, and a woman testifying under the alias Jane. Ventura's attorney read a statement from her after she testified.
I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up.
Now, his defense team never denied allegations of domestic abuse, but instead argued that the two women participated willingly in the sexual encounters. Both sides have now rested, and a judge says he'll give jury instructions on Monday.
Now, CNN's Lee Waldman joining us now live from New York to talk more about this trial. And Lee, all eyes have been on this case for weeks now to see how it plays out. Can you take us through the high points and what the jury heard during closing arguments?
Yolanda, good to be with you. And you said it right there. All eyes have been on this trial for weeks. There's still quite a big crowd behind us outside of that federal courthouse waiting for people to make their way out now that court is done for the day. The prosecution highlighted testimony from several of Combs' ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura, and a woman testifying under the alias Jane. The women testified Combs forced them to engage in these sexual acts that were oftentimes called freak-offs or hotel nights or wild king nights. They talked about how Combs used his inner circle in his criminal enterprise to acquire drugs to try and cover up that 2016 assault that happened in a hotel that we've seen the surveillance video of, and also that was played in front of that jury dozens of times throughout the course of this trial. They also allege his enterprise was behind a Molotov cocktail put inside of Kid Cudi's car once Combs learned that he was dating Ventura. And I have a quote from one of the prosecutors who was speaking to the jury in closing arguments. She said, up until today, the defendant was able to get away with these crimes because of his money, his power, his influence. That stops now. It's time to hold him accountable. Now, the defense went on the offensive here, challenging all that the prosecution brought up throughout the course of this trial, even challenging the merit of these charges brought up themselves, and sarcastically talking about those raids we saw on Combs' homes back in 2024 when we discovered that law enforcement took over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants. He also doubled down on those opening statements when he said that these sexual encounters were in fact consensual, telling members of the jury today in his closing arguments, quote, "They are swingers. They are avowedly swingers. This is their lifestyle." Now, after the defense's closing wrapped up, Yolanda, we heard a rebuttal from the prosecution. That was the last thing that the jury heard before they were dismissed for the weekend. And in that, they said the defendant is not a god. He is a person. And in this courtroom, he stands equal before the law. Overwhelming evidence proves his guilt. It is time to hold him accountable. Yolanda.
Well, Lee, this is so interesting because the prosecution called more than 30 witnesses. Diddy's defense spent less than 30 minutes calling no witnesses presenting their case. Why such different approaches? I mean, does this mean the defense is very confident or what?
Well, Yolanda, that was very interesting for all of us standing by and observing. But it comes to the prosecution. They have the burden of proof. They need to prove without a shadow of a doubt all of these charges that they're alleging happened throughout the course of 2 decades to get the jury to come up with a conviction. Now, while the defense's official case lasted less than 30 minutes, they were presenting their case right alongside the prosecution, and all of those scathing cross-examinations that we saw over these past few weeks. And in their official case that they presented to the jury, they read in text messages into the record that they say show and prove that all of these sexual encounters that happened were in fact consensual.
All right, Lee, it's been very interesting. It will be great to see how this all ends. I'll tell you that. I would have watched it gavel to gavel if it weren't federal and cameras were allowed in there. So CNN's Lee Waldman reporting live from New York City. Thank you so much.